everybody. This is really, really exciting because we have come together here to have a place where our doctoral student population can try to get some answers to this just incredibly surreal time that we are in. And the OB division, the first thing that happened when all this hit was, all right, what can we do for our members? And actually one of the very, very first things that came up was actually this doctoral webinar, and Christina Gibson actually was like, yes, let's do something for our doctoral students. And thank you, Christina, for thinking about that. It was the very first thing, that actually that came up. And then we have our amazing 4 doctoral student reps who have really run with this, and we have really been planning, and we're actually really excited to do this, because a lot of this is about answering questions, but a lot of it is also just community. And so for that reason, one of the things that we are asking is for people to turn on their video if they can, because and by the way, you can scroll to the right to be able to see everybody. But one thing I want you to do is, and as I'm watching all these videos turn on, scroll to the right, and just the feeling of seeing sort of everybody in our element, where we are. You guys, we're all doctoral students, or many of you are doctoral students, or you're faculty of doctoral students, and just the power of literally seeing each other. I think is just so much, and that's so much of what we wanted here. We wanted you guys to be able to see each other, to hear from each other, and in that regard, we're also going to be doing this webinar in a sort of brave format, which I will explain in a moment, but it has to do with everybody seeing it. So it's so great to see all of you. Hello, and for all of you who are around the world, it's just amazing. So let me tell you about the format of how we're going to be doing this, and I'm going to start that actually with our introductions. So who's here, and who are they? And so I'll actually start. I'll start with me. My name is, so you know who's talking to you. My name is Sigal Barsaid. I am the OB division chair for this year. And I am on the faculty in the management department at the Wharton School. And everyone who is on this panel is part of either the OB Division Executive Committee or from AOM in various roles that we think are going to be really useful to you. Also, what's really amazing about our OB Division Committee is that we are not only members of this committee, but we all, many of us do other things that are also relevant to you. So we have journal editors, we have doctoral coordinators, we have department chairs. So if you are also in one of these auxiliary roles, in addition, can you mention that in your introduction? So we're going to start with introductions, and I'm going to turn to each of the panelists and ask you to just sort of briefly say who you are, what role you have in the OB or division or the academy, any auxiliary thing, and then we will go to the next panelist. So I'm going to, doing this alphabetically, I'm going to start with Uta Bindel. So Uta, could you lead us off?
Sure. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Uta Bindel. I'm an OB rep at large in the OB division. I'm also an associate professor or reader at King's College London, and also speaking as the incoming doctoral coordinator at King's Business School. Hi, everybody.
Okay. Thank you. Then Jacqueline Coyle Shapiro.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jackie Coyle Shapiro. I'm based at the LSE and Cal State San Bernardino. I am currently president of the Academy of Management, and I think my relationship with the OB division is strong. I was sitting in Sigal's position 5 years ago, and it's wonderful to see a division of the academy going with this, because I think this is very useful, very proactive, and thank you very much for the invitation to join.
And Jackie, thank you. I really want to thank Jackie, and you're going to also be hearing from Angela and Matricia and Wendy from AOM. And when I reached out and said, look, it would be really helpful, to have the head of the entire AOM here who's got more information than we do. And then also the other folks are going to introduce themselves from Career Services, which is very relevant to you guys. They immediately said yes in this absolutely crazy time period. So thank you so much for that. So Christina Gibson.
Hi, everyone. I wanted to begin by just reaching out to anyone who is personally ill or who may have family or friends who are ill. My heart goes out to you, and I'm sending you warm and healing thoughts, the very best and strongest that I can muster. I'm the past division chair of the OB division, which means that I was sitting in Segal's role last year. I am also an associate editor of the Academy of Management Review, and I have served in a variety of different PhD coordinator and governance roles, including representing my school at the university level. And I've done so across a variety of different universities, including University of California, University of Wisconsin, University of Western Australia, and my current university, Pepperdine University. So I'm very happy to be here with you.
Thank you, Christina. Matricia James.
Good afternoon. I am Matricia James, Dean at St. Bonaventure University, and I'm also the Director of AOM Career Services.
Thank you. Andrew Knight.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andrew Knight. I'm a professor at Washington University in St. Louis. I'm a rep at large for the OB division, and also I'm an associate editor at AMJ.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. Wendy Kramer.
Hi, I'm Wendy Kramer. I'm the Career Services Manager at Academy of Management. So thanks for having us. We're excited to share some insights with you today.
Thank you. Angela Miles.
Hi, I'm Angela Miles, and I am the Associate Director for Career Services with AOM. I am at North Carolina Central University, and I am the Department Chair of Business Administration.
Okay, great. Thank you. Celia Moore.
Hi, everyone. I'm Celia Moore. I'm a professor of organizational behavior at Imperial College Business School in London. It's been very busy these days with projecting the course of the pandemic. Not me. I am a rep at large at Academy of Management and organizing with Keith Levitt the Doctoral Consortium this year. I also am redesigning the PhD program at Imperial College. And I saw Aggie, my PhD student, somewhere in the thing.
Thank you, Celia. Shamul Melwani.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shamul Melwani. I'm faculty at the University of North Carolina. I'm a rep at large in the OB division, and this year I'm serving as PDW chair. I also serve as a doctoral coordinator for my program, and just as in a little bit of personal news, I literally came into this meeting after my doctoral student just defended her dissertation. So it's sort of an exciting.
Congratulations. Ron Piccolo.
Hi, good afternoon or good evening. My name is Ron Piccolo. I'm professor and department chair in management at the University of Central Florida in Orlando. I am following in Jackie and Christina and Segal's footsteps. I'm currently the program chair for the OB division. And in the next year, I'll be chair-elect, and then ultimately division chair of the OB division. I'm on a couple of editorial boards and associate editor for Organizational Dynamics in the Journal of Leadership and Organizational Studies.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you again to all of you for taking your time and being here. I'm really looking forward to what you are going to be talking about. Now, I'd also like to introduce now your OB division student rep facilitators, who in a moment I'm actually going to be turning this over to, and they are going to be running the procedure from there. And so let me just have them say hello and introduce themselves. So I'll start with Lisa Brady.
Hey, everyone. I am a third year PhD student in the Department of Management at the University of Alabama. And this is my first year as an OB student rep. So glad to see everyone here.
Thank you. Catherine Klashinsky.
Hi, everyone. I'm Catherine Klashinsky. I'm a PhD student in my 5th year here at Purdue University, and this is my 2nd term being one of the student representatives.
Great. Hannah Weissman.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah Wiseman. I'm one of the OB Division student reps. I'm a 4th year PhD student at the London School of Economics, and this is also my 2nd term as a student rep.
Okay, thank you. And then Howie Zhu.
Hi, everyone. My name is Howie Zhu, and I'm a 3rd year PhD student from the University of Illinois at Chicago. Just passed my comprehensive exam, and that's my 2nd year. That's my 1st year of the student rep.
Congratulations. And by the way, Andrew, I really appreciate you helping to tutor us in the proper use of kind of affective expression without being able to speak. So I like the wave, I like the thumbs up, that all works great. And like I said, they're going to take over in a minute, but before they do, let me just give everybody the rules of the road here. All right. So the first thing is, as you can probably tell already, we want this to be interactive. We don't want this to be hugely formal. And to do that, we're willing to have errors. We're willing to make this complicated. And the way that we're making this complicated is that, unlike the usual format where you guys would all type in your questions in chat, and then there would be a moderator, and then, and that would be it, we're going to do this a little bit differently. The way we're going to do this is that that there will be a first question asked initially by each of the doctoral student reps that has been sent in advance, and from people who couldn't make it today. And we will answer those. That'll be a first question. But then the doctoral rep will turn to you all, who we can see. And well, actually, she won't really, or he won't really do it that way. It'll be with a hand raise. So if you want to ask a question, raise your hand, and you should have all received the information about how to raise your hand. Raise your hand, and one of you, obviously can't be everybody, but one of you will be called on by your name. When your name gets called, so pay attention. If you've raised your hand, that's not the time to leave the room, get a drink, or use the restroom. We'll say your name, and then your face will come on the screen, and you will be able to ask your question. Now, I realize the way I've just described it, if we get even one hand, that'll be an amazing thing. But no, the idea is really to give you a chance to, for us to see you and to be a little bit more interactive. If, however, you do not want to do that, it makes you nervous, you'd prefer to use chat, absolutely no problem. Do that. We're also having active monitoring of chat. It's being added into it's very sophisticated system we've set up. It's being added to a Google Doc. Lisa's handling this with the help from Emily Ulrich. This is all like we've got this down. So, and if things get a little bit out of whack, that's fine. We'll figure it out. To remind you, we are recording the session so that people can see this later. So while, again, I'm going to request for everybody who just got online that if you can use your camera, because a large part of this, I know I'm an affect scholar, so maybe I'm sort of more attuned to this, but a large part of this is indeed everybody being able to see everybody else. However, if you don't want to have that for posterity, then go ahead and close your camera. Unless you are called on to ask a question, please stay on mute. So we're not going that free form. If you're not asking a question or asked to hold on to a question, stay on mute. And I think that actually covers everything except for one last thing that I wanted to end with, which was very similar to what Christina started with. We are in this time period because there's a pandemic, and it part of what I think will probably be talked about today, but just in the event that if we don't get there, is that we are all in the time of a pandemic right now. There are people who are really ill and dying, and there are people who you yourself or who might be in that situation. And from the entire OB Division Executive Committee, we really, our hearts go out to everyone in this time period. And, that is the number one important thing. I mean, frankly, if you leave this webinar with nothing else, the number one important thing is for you to take care of yourself and to take care of your loved ones. And everything else will and can wait, particularly in our field. Most schools have been really compassionate around this. And so, just keep that in mind in the context of this whole experience. And also, on an optimistic note, keep in mind that someday this will be a story we tell. And it is not always going to be like this, even if it feels like at this moment. All right. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Lisa. And Lisa, if you could ask the first question.
Sure. Okay. So question number 1. Do any of the panelists have advice for students on how to combat social isolation during this time? Furthermore, do you have any advice on how to maintain social connections with fellow doctoral students and academic colleagues?
I'll go ahead and jump in. This is Christina. First, let me apologize, but I am not able to show my video and be heard at the same time. We're having some actually very unusual, crazy weather here in Southern California, and it's making our internet unstable. So high winds and heavy rain, very atypical. So the question was around combating social isolation during this time. And I think that's a really, really important question for us to start with. I know many of us are feeling isolated and perhaps even grieving for the way we had lived our life before the pandemic, or concerned around maintaining our connections. And I have a few strategies that I've been picking up as I've been talking with a variety of different organizations and colleagues that might be helpful. So first strategy is to stay connected regularly. So ensure that you have a regularity in a rhythm in the connections that you make with others. An example might be schedule a Monday morning coffee break with the other PhD students in your PhD program for every Monday morning, and ensure that there's a core group of you who are going to commit to that, to be online at 9 a.m. and have that online coffee break. Or maybe it's a Wednesday lunch appointment with your folks, and you're having an online meeting with them for lunch every Wednesday. Or maybe it's a Friday night virtual happy hour. We've been doing this at Pepperdine, and it's actually been a lot of fun to enjoy a beverage at the end of the week every Friday. So put these things on your calendar, ensure that a couple of friends commit, prioritize these gatherings. And when you're in these gatherings online, make sure that you're sharing of yourself and you're listening really carefully to others and asking questions of others. So that might mean that you're sharing photos, you're sharing music, you're sharing pets, or just talking about what you're experiencing at a deeper level, and really listen to what others are experiencing and ask them questions about their experiences. Second, if your local jurisdiction is still allowing you to get outside, I highly recommend that you do that. This is an important strategy for ensuring both physical health, but also mental health. And you'll be surprised that you'll start to see the same folks regularly outside in your neighborhood as you take a walk. You're practicing physical distancing, but you can wave and smile, and that helps to combat the feelings of isolation that you might have. Really crazy, interesting, fun, new online groups that are popping up. So these may not be people that you know, but you might want to try something new. There are cooking groups, there are yoga groups, there are art groups that have regular meetings online. And it's a nice way to expand your social circle in order, again, to combat those feelings of isolation. So I'll stop there with some of those strategies that I've seen working and that I've used, and turn it over to anyone else that might have other strategies.
Thank you so much, Christina. I think we had Shamul that wanted to comment as well.
So yeah, I love all those points. Actually, I had written down most of them. I know there's a couple of the UNC doctoral students on here too, but I wanted to share some of the things that they've been doing. In our program, we had one of our students sort of took charge of trying to keep this sort of sense of normalcy. So she's been organizing sort of regular writing hours, something that they anyway get together and do, just where everybody's online. They have a sort of a bi-monthly brown bag, which never stopped. It just kept going from like week one. It just jumped straight online, and they've sort of consistently managed to do that. Online happy hours. Our department has been doing lunches, so we have sort of a regular weekly lunch that we organize, and we similarly at 12:30 on Wednesday sort of continue to prioritize that. There's a lot of awkwardness with these online interactions, because when you think about, I think one of the difficulties is we get together and it's lovely seeing everybody's faces, and then you actually sometimes end up feeling more isolated because you don't have any real conversations. You're just listening to a smattering of different conversations. And we've actually started doing what we do with our students in our lunches, where we create these 10-minute breakout groups. So we go into groups with 2 other people, and then you actually can have a really sort of a real sort of less superficial conversation. And you feel like you've gotten some of that connection. And this is something that I found really useful, is 10 people on a screen. It's wonderful to see your friends at one time, but these conversations feel very hard to manage without everyone either talking together or lots of silence as people sit on mute. So those were a couple of the things that I wanted to share. I think the other thing, and this a little bit comes from my own sort of also research and sort of focus on emotions. I think one of the things that I struggled with the most when it came to social isolation was I felt, everybody's having a really different experience. I have little children. I feel the opposite of isolated. I wish I had some isolation. In comparison to, I know some of my grad students who live alone, who haven't really seen anyone in, a whole series of days. And so really starting to think about also just being really honest. We would get on these calls and we would talk about what was happening in the world. And it just sort of felt like I didn't even have a chance to express what was happening with me and where things were. So sometimes also just being open or courageous or vulnerable to share like the reality of this is what's happening for me. I haven't seen a person in 6 days, or I haven't had 6 minutes alone. And those are just things that help us also feel more connected. Okay. I'll jump off.
Thanks so much, Shimul. Appreciate both of your responses. All right, now we're going to take a live question. So if any of the listeners have any questions that they have, you can raise your hand by using the function in Zoom, or you can type it into the chat. And whoever gets there first, we'll call on you. Julian, you raised your hand. All right, if you want to take your microphone off mute, you can ask your question.
Yeah, hi. I hope you can hear me. I was just wondering if any of you who are more experienced in the field of academia has ever experienced anything remotely similar, and might give us some ideas of what that looks like in terms of the impact on the job market, and just how for us, for like a medium to long-term outlook, our plans should change as a result of this. Any input? Thanks.
All right, any panelists can raise their physical hand if they'd like to answer the question.
All right, well, I think nobody wants to raise their hand because it means they've had to be around long enough to say that they've seen something like this. I think that the most similar thing that we have seen is probably the big recession in I guess it was 2008, but like and that was probably the most similar. And I mean, not in the sense of everything stopping, but in the sense of kind of the slowdown and hiring freezes and things like that. And actually the recovery was, at least, from what I saw, the recovery was actually quite quick in that situation. It was not something that plagued people for years after. You didn't have people staying in, you didn't have doctoral programs stop, so I think one thing to remember is that that universities would really like to continue. It is not in their interest to try to kind of constrain in. And while, yes, on the margins, on the margins, could this influence something, for a year or so? Yeah, it might. And also, you don't even know which year, by the way. It could be next year, it could actually be the one after. But it wasn't, clearly it wasn't as severe as what we're looking at right now. But at the time, it really felt that way, actually. It was not trivial. And things were really crashing. And so I would say that is the closest. And the other thing, by the way, I'm going to say to my panelists is I'm going to cold call on you. The students won't, but I will. So, Jackie.
Sigal, just to add to what you said, I think that it's also important to recognize that some institutions are going to see this as a wonderful opportunity and are going to continue hiring as planned. And so I think that this year we might see more variation in terms of what institutions are doing, but also we might see things just delayed a little. So that institutions who want to fly candidates out may hold off until towards the end of the year or even the beginning of next year. So I think what we'll see is a job market that might be pushed back a little. But I do know of some institutions that are, rubbing their hands and saying, this is a wonderful opportunity for us to continue hiring. So I don't see it all in terms of, kind of gloomy. I think what we're going to see is just a lot of variation. And that's going to be augmented by where in the world you are and at what stage your country is in, or the country you're trying to find a job in is in the COVID life cycle.
And one thing I also want to add to that, Jackie, which I like what you're saying, one of the things that the OB division looked into this year, and for those of you who took your 5-year survey, by the way, I worked very hard to be in the position that I got to do both the 5-year survey and handle, life-changing situations like, But one of the things that we did in the 5-year survey is we asked about your interest about timing for the job market. Because one of the things that we're very concerned about is that the job market keeps moving up sooner and sooner. Pretty soon it'll be great. It'll go back to March or something. But, so the irony of this kind of, is that people will see, well, how does it work when you go back to a job market that is closer to a December and a January, which, again, if we're talking about history, is much closer to where it was prior to about 10 years ago, 12 years ago. So for you guys, for the doctoral students, you're like, what do you mean? It's always been this way. It has not. We traditionally hired in December, January, even February you could be getting your last offers. And that gave you the entire fall semester to get your dissertation ready, to get your act ready, which led people to not have to be in their programs for as long. So who knows? It may even have a beneficial effect in that way. Yeah, Matricia.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to pass it on to Hannah, but I'm also just going to make a request.
Oh, wait, Lisa, Matricia had her hand up.
So just to kind of add to what you were saying about the cycle of hiring, moving it closer to spring or later in the winter, some schools do that anyway. They may not participate in AOM placements because positions aren't approved that early. And so it may be more schools in that same category. Like this year when we did the virtual career fair in February, there were schools who didn't participate in August because they didn't have their positions approved at that time. So it won't mean that may not mean that jobs are going away. They just won't be confirmed as early as August. So I think for doctoral students, you just have to pay close attention, be aware, watch the posting so that you can see what's out there and find your match and be ready to respond whenever they come up.
I just add to that? Just one other thought. Hopefully my audio is still coming across okay with my image on. Good? Okay. Julian, the other thought I had is that I've heard a number of universities that might have been considering an assistant professor position are instead going to be hiring postdoctoral fellows. And so if you've considered a postdoc as a potential option, now might be a really interesting time that there would be additional postdoc opportunities, more so than in a regular job market. So I know that in some parts of the world, for example, Australia, postdocs are very common and can be a really interesting strategy and opportunity as opposed to the traditional assistant professor tenure track position. So that we may see an increase in those postdoc opportunities as a result of the pandemic.
Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, so I'm going to pass it on to Hannah. And I just want to ask if when the students pose their questions, if you could just state your school and or your year before, so we have a little context, that would be great. Take it away, Hannah.
Great. Thank you, Lisa, for getting us started. I'm going to follow a similar procedure to what Lisa just did. So I'll take one question from our prepared list of questions, mainly that we received via email, and then I'll take one question from the live audience. Okay, so the next question from our list, which actually seems to be coming up in the group chat a few times, so I think it's going to be highly relevant, is do you have any recommendations for collecting data within organizations during a crisis time like this? How would you mitigate concerns about heightened stress and uncertainty influencing responses? Our first panelist who has offered to answer this question is Celia. So Celia, if you would like to take yourself off mute and share your thoughts.
Thank you. So this is a really hard question, in part because the answers to it are really varied. So the first thing that I wanted to say is that it, as everyone acknowledges, this is not a normal time to collect data in the field. And so in many cases, responses will be affected, and in many cases, we won't know how they are affected. When we were talking about this before before it went live with you guys, we had some great feedback from the other panelists that mentioned, A, it provides great fodder for our discussion sections when we do write our papers, and two, if we have data from before the pandemic really emerged and we get similar data, that means that our data are really robust and we can talk about that. So both of those things are true. But I do think that many people's data collection opportunities will be disrupted in different ways. I also think that people will be very understanding of that happening, and understanding that that might include some delays for certain research questions. But the two things that I've been thinking about as this has been marinating in my head in the last 15 minutes or so is the most important piece of advice I would have is keep your relationships with your field organizations alive. Like they might be going under immense financial distress and personal distress and all this distress that we're feeling ourselves. Them opening themselves up to you is a generosity of spirit that right now we need to return. So is there a way that you can help? Is there a way that just do whatever you can to make sure that that relationship with the people inside those organizations remains strong? Because if it gets delayed, you want to make sure that that relationship remains positive. The second thing that I would recommend is you might need to collect data differently, right? If it was going to be online, maybe you need to do something in person or on the phone, or think about ways that you need to pivot, right? So I know a lot of us faculty have needed to pivot very quickly to online teaching, people that had no interest or experience ever in doing that online, like me. And so we've had to become agile in a way that we might not have expected. And this actually provides an opportunity for PhD students to practice agility in their data collection. Maybe it means that the research question you ask gets a bit shifted. Maybe it means that you ask a different question because an opportunity has arisen that hadn't presented itself before. I know that data that I'm collecting that was going to be inside an organization, I'm now going to use a snowball sampling technique of people that actually really desperately do want to talk right now in this time. So think about ways that you might need to, it might benefit you to pivot a little bit in this time. And then the final thing is this too shall pass, right? This will not be like this forever, even though, God, there are some days right now where it seems like it won't be like this forever. And our more I don't want to say normal, our more typical ways of collecting data will emerge again. It just won't be for the next 3 months. And in a lifetime as a professional in academia, 3 months is not that long, even though it seems like it is when you're a PhD student.
Great, thanks for sharing your thoughts. Are there any other panelists who want to comment on this question? If you could raise your hand. I've also received some follow-ups from the audience, whether you guys think there might be any unique differences for qualitative research versus just quantitative research. Okay, well, why don't I take a question from the audience, and then while that's simmering, if anyone has any thoughts they want to share after, we'll make time for that. Okay, so I see right away that we have Giselle Antoine's hand raised. So Giselle, if you could please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, I'm Giselle. I'm a third-year PhD student in OB at University of Washington. I think my question, it's a little bit hypothetical, and I think it depends on sort of what happens in the future. But I'm thinking forward to the Academy presentation in Vancouver, and I had set up a symposium, and I was supposed to present in another symposium. And I was imagining that experience as being like a really important social networking opportunity for me, thinking about the job market coming ahead. And so I'm just wondering if it, for instance, doesn't happen in person, if you all have any suggestions on how I could still make the connections I want to make and get the feedback I'm hoping to get if we're not able to meet physically in person this August.
Thank you very much for your question, Giselle. So I already see a hand raised. I'm going to quickly ask Jackie if she would like to talk about this question, because this actually aligns exactly with a prepared question that we had gotten via email. So Jackie, maybe I'll take your response first, and then Wendy, I saw your hand up, so I'll come back to you.
Sure. We have made no decision yet on the physical meeting in Vancouver. We hope to make a decision in the next 4 weeks in terms of whether there will be a physical meeting in Vancouver. I think that the next couple of weeks, we at the Board of Governors need to spend more time with the divisions in terms of involving them in planning for a conference that would have a virtual element to it. Because if we think about it, if the conference went ahead, we have members all over the world who couldn't possibly be there because of travel restrictions, because of their own university restrictions. So I think we have a wonderful opportunity of experimenting with what could we do virtually should the worst case happen. I think that divisions will play a key role in terms of what is possible. If you think about it, the Academy is run by volunteers, and they have been working so hard under very difficult circumstances. So I would ask you to just, if you can, bear with the uncertainty a couple more weeks, and we should have a definitive answer for you then, Giselle.
Sure? Are you sure it can't be earlier? I'm sorry, did I say that out loud? Okay.
It could be. It could be. I don't want to raise anyone's hopes, and I do feel bad at a kind of very personal level for just adding kind of a couple more weeks uncertainty to everyone's plate, but bear with us. We have some really important work to do very, very quickly, and we just need a couple weeks buffer. So watch this space.
Yeah, I'm Wendy Kramer. I've worked with Academy of Management for 16 years now. I was in a part-time capacity until recently, and I'm one of 2 remote employees that they have. So I've already been in this game, the remote game, for over a year now. And as far as connecting, what we do have is the way that I hope you found out about this webinar, which is the Connect platform with Academy of Management. We have approximately 40 employees that work in New York State. And believe me, we were waiting for Jackie's decision with bated breath as well. And we're like, what, another month? So that's why I wanted her to deliver that news. But we do work hard behind the scenes, and we're really trying hard to get people to better engage and better use our Connect platform. So once this webinar goes offline, these types of questions are exactly what we want to see on that Connect platform. You've got a wealth of years of experience at the table. So why not tap into that better? I know some of you are, you're at least part of 2 divisions, right? I mean, that's part of your benefits. So take advantage of that benefit that you have with Academy. Academy doesn't just happen once a year, I guess is what I'm trying to say. We are there all year round working diligently with our volunteers, which is why my 2 volunteers are on this call. And, with Matricia and Angela, in career services. So, definitely take advantage of the Connect platform. And as far as reaching out, the other platform that I'm learning more about myself is LinkedIn, and how to make those connections on LinkedIn. And I just saw a really valuable webinar the other day, and I've typed up some really great tips and tricks and how to make those connections as doctoral students with faculty at those universities that you'd like to be a part of. And why not start those now? Why not reach out for an informal, coffee chat with them? But, like I said, I've got that all typed up, and I'm going to be posting it as part of it's the Career Services Roundtable. If you're not part of our Connect group, do that. And again, any kind of career service conversations following this webinar, we'd like to host there as well. So those are some resources that you already have as members. So, hang in there and know that we're here for you.
Great, thank you, Wendy. Are there any other panelists who would like to speak to this question? Ron, I see your hand, so feel free to chime in.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. I think the original question was having an opportunity to meet some people and other scholars, particularly those you'd like to network with or get to know. And the Academy certainly provides a great venue for that, especially in sessions and symposia. That's what that conference is really all about. And so if it doesn't happen, or if it's done in some other, non-on-site way, you have the same opportunity to bump into people. But you can do an awful lot of networking, outside of the Academy. You can have your faculty make introductions for you. You could do all the things that you would do or try to do with meeting new people, which is add value or find areas of common interest, introduce yourself. There is a sense of great community, especially in our division, like we're all in this together, right? We all are sort of rooting for each other in some way. And I think it's perfectly reasonable for you to say, hey, we don't get the chance to meet at the academy, but I'm interested in your work. Here's something that I'd like to run by you, or is there ever a chance that we could connect and I can tell you about a study I'm contemplating? I've done that many times, and almost always people will say yes, or at least be willing to entertain a conversation. So I recognize that the academy, the opportunities for connection are not going to be there maybe this time around, but that doesn't mean you can't reach out and say hi, or find someone who can help make a connection for you. There's enough common interests, and we're all in the same division, right? So we all have lots of things in common. So you can get to anybody you want, within a few messages. I'm certain of it.
Thank you for that reminder, Ron. That's helpful, especially for our job market candidates who have definitely sent in that question a few times. Okay, so Giselle, I hope that was helpful. I'll now be turning it over to Catherine.
Actually, Matricia had...
Matricia, sorry about that.
No problem. But as we think about the academy, if we don't have a physical meeting and it turns into a virtual academy, I think this is an opportunity for us to continue to maximize the effectiveness of a virtual world. Gazelle, you mentioned that you might be presenting papers or caucuses, or you can still do that, and then you can perhaps get an attendee list for the things, the sessions that you participated in, and reach out to them. And also during the presentation, be very interactive. Offer your email, a virtual business card during your sessions, and pay attention to those who were very interested in your presentation. Reach out to them because you most likely have a common interest. You can also look at the Academy of Management attendee list. You can participate virtually in other sessions that you're not as an attendee, not a presenter, and reach out to those who are presenting. So we're going to have to learn how to adjust. I guess this may be a paradigm shift where we're going to learn to reach out and network virtually. And you can kind of do those same things. Think about what you would do face to face and try to mimic them in a virtual way.
Okay. Now that we've got a couple responses to that question, I think I can turn it over to Catherine and we can go to the next.
Great. Thank you, Hannah. Speaking of making virtual connections, if you haven't already, we'd love to see your faces. So if you haven't, feel free to turn on your video, and we can all see each other and be in this and interact. Our next question, to pivot a little bit, is, do you have any advice for students on how to develop a routine for working at home, or how to set up an effective working environment? And this question is for Andrew.
Hey everyone, sorry if you can hear my neighbor doing yard work in the background. That's part of the challenge of working at home. And I know there are folks who are very experienced in working from home on the panel, but I also think in general, PhD students are quite adept at working from a wide range of different environments. Nonetheless, I think this is such a unique situation that we risk importing some of the same practices from a prior environment into the current one. And so more than anything, my guidance would be to step back, question some of your existing routines, and have a way for just taking stock, even if it's just on a weekly basis, touching base with yourself to see whether you're getting the work done that you want to get done, and also that you're preserving the other aspects of your life that you want to preserve. Speaking just for myself, my own home environment is one where I've taken over my 12-year-old's bedroom, and I'm teaching classes out of his bedroom twice in the evenings. And so as a result, I'm very protective over other parts of my time through the day. And I'm very focused in blocking off segments of time for work and segments of time for family and other interests. That is a process that's been evolving, though, over the past few weeks. And so I like to go to the data. And if you like to go to the data, you can use applications like Rescue Time as a way of just keeping track of where you are and how you are spending your time, and to get a sense of those moments of the day where you might be most productive. And outside those moments, give yourself the freedom to embrace and enjoy the other aspects of life that are important.
I think those are some great insights and really important tips to keep in mind. I think Celia also had some thoughts. Celia, would you like to answer?
Just two really quick ones. When Segal answered that this was similar to 2008, for me, what it feels most similar to was when I had it wasn't totally exogenous, the shock of having my first baby, when like the world transforms really seriously, really quickly, and
deeply endogenous.
Yes. I know, but it feels exogenous when you bring this baby home. And, you know, time has just blows up and has none of the same meanings. And like, so the reason why I brought that up is that I think that Andrew's intuition is right, that the ways that we are used to being productive or effective might go totally out the window. And in those first few months of being a parent, like I was awake at all sorts of strange times of day and asleep at strange times of day. And you might have a very unusual, atypical way of finding places to have peace and to find some mental space to be productive. The only other one that I was going to say is I think because we're at home all the time now and the news is so relentless. I remember several years ago, I was on a panel of young scholars and people were asking from the audience what technical ways we use to be productive. And several people in the panel said to remove yourself from technology. So I have actually like unplugged my Wi-Fi, just stop the outside from just to find a little bit of peace. That and like jigsaw puzzles or cryptic crosswords, but that's probably idiosyncratic to me.
Great. I think those are some really good tips as well. We'll now move on to
Shamul had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Go ahead, Shamul.
No worries. I just had a little quick tip also in thinking about this, you know, in talking to some of my doctoral students as we've been doing these check-ins to make sure everyone is staying sort of mentally healthy. This has been the biggest issue, is not understanding when to stop and start work. It just feels like the day is very long and people are used to working late. And, you know, we've been brainstorming sort of ideas. And one of the things that we've talked a lot about is sort of utilizing the Pomodoro technique. So, you know, like really, if you guys know, like the 25-minute timers to get like chunks of work done, just because it can be very helpful to sort of say, okay, I'm going to focus and I'm going to give myself a break, or I'm going to focus on these 3 times and then I'm going to give myself a break, just as a way to create these sort of moments of like sort of forced breaks, but then also sort of separating, you know, time when you can be doing one versus the other. Just another strategy to the rescue time.
Great. Thank you so much for chiming in on that. Unless anyone has any other thoughts, we'll now move on to a live question. I think George, Tam, your hand is still up. If you still have your question, would you please unmute yourself and ask the panelists?
Hi, sorry. Hi, everyone. My name's George. I'm from the University of Melbourne, and we are sort of going through an online teaching debacle, I would call, because a lot of teachers are really trying to make classes engaging, but I think it goes both ways. So I'm just wondering, in terms of an engagement perspective, if you've got any good online teaching tools or suggestions or tips on how we can make I'm still in my first year, so how we can make our classes that are usually a lot more lively and discussion-based, how we can break through that ice and make it a bit more engaging.
I believe we had this in, we had a panelist ready to go for this question. Shimel, we'll actually turn back to you.
You are not talking way too much at all. And in fact, like I said, I'm going to start cold calling on folks who are talking less. So go for it.
Okay. Well, I actually was trying to think about this. So so just like almost, I'm guessing every faculty member, we had to move online about 3 weeks ago, with the 1 week sort of window to do that. There were just, there was lots of information coming our way about, almost too much information. I think that it was almost a struggle because it felt like people were sending advice and tips and things from everywhere. And as I started thinking about it, I made two little sort of, I don't know, what are those things, like little words that tell you, like anagrams or something like that, to remember when I was going into every single class. I actually think that my classes have gone relatively well. They've been successful. Students have been writing me saying they've been enjoying it. Hopefully not as much of a debacle. So I try to think about it in two specific ways. One of them is sort of just tactical. What are you doing in every single class? I actually think we're so lucky to be teaching organizational behavior. I couldn't imagine sort of having to sit in my home office and just talk at people and just lecture them for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, like so many other classes, in the business school that are more sort of problem set oriented might have to do. And I think we have the option to sort of make things more engaging and interactive, and also bringing what's happening in the world into our classes and enabling that. So I sort of came up with this, and the word I have is brain, and these are the sort of 5 tactics, BRAIN, where B stands for breakouts or breaks. So finding ways to sort of either put people in smaller groups so they can talk to each other, or just sort of build in breaks of all different kinds, whether it's to just talk about something that's just a little bit meaningless. R is reflection. So whether it is people reflecting in chat, I found the chat reflections really great. So you watch a video, and as you're watching the video, you're reflecting on something you've done, or you get into another breakout group and engage in the reflection. A is activity, and so the activity could be anything. It's either something they do prior to coming, and then we talk about it. So it could be something like a negotiation with your family about something, as an example of a negotiation, or just even working with a group on a case, or an activity that you could transfer. I is intimate or interpersonal. One of the things that I found really odd was just looking at people's bedrooms. There was just too much of it. I teach a class at 9 o'clock in the morning, and everybody is in their bathrobes in their bedroom. And I was like, this is too much intimacy for me the first time I ever taught this. But then I actually thought about this as it's kind of amazing. I get to sort of see people at their most vulnerable. And so at the start of every single class, I do sort of an interpersonal check-in, and it could just be, what's the hashtag that describes how you feel right now? I teach undergrad, so that's the hashtag. Or I do the rosebud thorn. I even just ask for people's movie recommendations, just something that's having them right up front share something that's about themselves. And the last one is it's sort of just setting up norms, but also I also call it, the other one the other N is noise. I think one of the hard thing about Zoom, these calls, is it's just so silent. There's everyone's on mute, and then the person who's talking is, it's useful for something like this, but in a smaller classroom, I actually have people just go off mute unless they have lawnmowers in the background or are in a really crowded family space, just so that it feels a little more just normal. We're hearing the ambient noises. People feel free to sometimes jump in and talk to each other. And as I started moving to that, it started to feel a little bit, so those are just in ways to make this better. This is in addition to, of course, what you're teaching. But then in addition to this, I sort of think about things as being for myself also, and I share this very much with the students when I first started the class, was from an emotional perspective, the word would be care, right? So C for compassion, and this is compassion for myself, having never done this before, but also really compassion for them. They do not want to be doing this. Nobody wants to be sitting at home. Most of them complain the most about having to spend too much time with their families. And that's the C. The A is awkward. It's awkward. It's just a lot of looking at yourself. There's a lot of students who have social anxiety, and they struggle with the faces, and they've shared that with me. And so just being ready to sort of address that and highlight it and be willing to work with people depending on the way they are.
The third is real. So again, sharing when things are difficult or not working. And then the last one is, just because I couldn't leave that out, is E for emotion. Just like, this is our only way to really be communicating. Is there's no, if you think about sort of signaling and sharing emotions, all we're seeing is faces and emotions, right? So like sort of highlighting to them that I can see them bigger and larger, more high definition than I've ever seen them before, but same thing. And so really being able to like magnify and talk about that. So sharing, I think, and being really open about our experiences, in addition to sort of coupling it with these types of different activities, I think it's been okay. It hasn't been great, but it's been okay. Less of a debacle at least.
Awesome. I love those tips. Do any panelists have any other insights or thoughts they would like to share? If so, please raise your physical hand and I'll look for you. Sigal. Sigal.
Thanks. I have actually both a tip to share and a plug, which is, so one of the things the OB division did once this hit 2 weeks ago is we set up a library in AOM Connects, as well as a discussion thread. And we really, and literally one of the title is Online Teaching Tips. And we really, there are already some there that are really good, including some resources for videos and things. But we would love to see that even populated more. And we have not been as successful as I would have liked getting faculty to do it. But it would be awesome if our possibly more motivated doctoral students, as you're getting this information, if you could please put it in there, that would be a resource. You know, that's something that if you guys did this weekend could change your lives next week. And like I said, there already are things in there for you to take away, but that would be really, really helpful.
This is Christina. I'll just jump in. One of the things that I wanted to echo that Shmuel had mentioned is just how important it is to feel free to experiment a bit in this environment. I actually really appreciate it. And it's a nice time to try out new kinds of breakouts, discussion forums, etc., that you might not otherwise have utilized. So embrace it with some playfulness and some joy, and try some new things.
Great, thank you, Christina. Do any other panelists have thoughts to share? Great. With that, I will hand it over to Howie. Would you like to ask the next question?
Thanks, Catherine. So my question is related to the stress management. The question is, during this pandemic, many doctoral students may be feeling concerned about their health and safety, as well as the health and safety of their family members and friends, particularly those who belong to high-risk groups. Do you have any general advice on how to navigate doctoral student life during this stressful time? So this question is for Sigal.
So, you know, per sort of what I started with, one of the first things I would say is don't assume you're going to be productive. This is not like a vacation, all right? Or like even though everything is kind of sort of stopped, except for not really if you're teaching, because then it's worse. But I have to tell you personally, for the first easily 2 weeks of this, and frankly, I almost feel like I've just recently come out of it, I've really not been able to concentrate very well. You know, I can't, it's hard for me to I've got some revisions I should be working on, like it's hard for me to concentrate on that. It's hard for me, I can answer emails, I can organize webinars, I can do things that take sort of short bursts of attention, but the longer sort of thoughtful stuff. Now I have to say, it did come back. I did an ASQ review and a work on a revision, and it was like Saturday, and I was like, wow, okay, I got 2 hours in that I felt like I could really focus. And And also, like, sometimes, I don't know if other people have felt this, but even though I'm getting more sleep than like I ever usually can, I'm really tired. And, and I don't have, unlike some of the panelists, my kids are older, so I'm not running around after toddlers nonstop. Or, and I think that we have to be very conscious of sort of the ambient noise of this environment emotionally on us. That you can't just assume that this is going to be business as usual. And that and you can't blame yourself if you're like, well, wait a minute, why aren't I, like I'm supposed to be studying. I'm supposed to be, now some of you are in a situation where, you still have classes to take, you still have things you have to do. And that kind of thing can help focus you, if you have like a deadline right in front of you. But I wouldn't feel badly about yourselves if you're having a hard time with it. And I would also reach out. You would be amazed that your faculty is much more understanding than you might think they are. And for example, we had a situation which my doctoral students who are online will know, that they reached out very reasonably and said, look, let's talk about the timing of comps, right? That is coming right up. Like, if you really want us to actually learn something, does it make sense to do this in 3 weeks in the normal time? And you know what? It didn't make sense. And now there could be different thoughts about, do you delay, do you not delay? I think it's worth the conversation. In our case, we decided to delay, and as a faculty, it was like, yeah, like we want them to actually be able to try to focus better. And so don't be afraid of asking your faculty stuff as it relates to this issue about just safety and the people around you and people getting sick and what do you do. The first thing is, and I speak, by the way, it's funny, Andrew had said, keep in mind the research. And so this is one of those times where the research, that I've done has actually come in really handy for understanding this time period. And one thing that we know is that suppression is not good. Okay, suppression, it doesn't help. It makes you actually feel worse, and it also screws up with your memory. So that's unhelpful for other things. And what I would say is, acknowledge the emotions that you're feeling. Right? Don't try to suppress them. Acknowledge them. Feel free to share them. That's some of the things that sort of Celia was saying, I think, earlier, which is like, don't just try to make sure, don't try to make sure everything's all right, when it's not. And also, you'd be surprised at how much people will reach out if you actually tell the truth about how you're feeling. And the other thing, don't underestimate other people, is I guess what I'm saying. And the other thing I would say that I've been talking a lot about, including in the press, and not surprisingly given my research, is don't make yourself more miserable than you already need to be. Okay, so this is a tough situation. All right, we're in a tough situation. This is bad. This is hard. I get that, but we can sometimes make ourselves even more miserable through the classic, catastrophizing, all or nothing thinking, that kind of thing. We can also make ourselves more miserable without knowing it. And a lot of what I've written about is emotional contagion. And for those of you who haven't heard about the construct, the basic idea is that we catch emotions from other people. And we almost literally catch them. We do it through behavioral mimicry, and then we actually feel the emotion. And so, but the thing that is really, and there's a ton of research on this that has been done, but the thing that is really insidious about emotional contagion is that we don't realize it is happening. So what happens is you get on a Zoom call with somebody, or you're talking to your, somebody in your family, and they are citing every horrible statistic that you've ever heard, right? This is going to be for 2 years. Actually, you don't actually get immunity. Once you get it, you're going to get it at least 3 more times. There's no data for this, right? But they've heard the latest whatever, or you're talking to other doctoral students and they're like, nobody will ever hire again. Our entire way of life has changed as we know it, and everybody should switch to studying COVID-19 right now because that's going to change. No, don't surround yourself with. And some of those people are very nice, by the way. They are simply anxious, they've gotten it from other people, and everybody's spiraling up in this negative contagion. So what I would say is try to stop that. Like if it's somebody you like, just say, you know what, let's talk about something else, right? I tend to lecture them then about emotional contagion. That doesn't always go well. But basically, talk to them about something else. Try not to surround yourself to make yourself more miserable than you need to be. And we have so much literature in positive psychology about what are the things that make us feel better. We know that volunteering makes us feel better. We know exercise makes us feel better. We know that mindfulness can make us feel better. We know that high quality positive relationships can feel better. I'll do a shout out to Shmuel and say, we know that gossip makes us feel better, but only if it's done with two people. But basically, like, there are things that we know. And what you should try to be doing is you should be trying to actually inject positive emotional contagion into other people, and to try to kind of uplift everyone, including yourself, and it will make yourself feel better. And the very last thing I will say is don't feel guilty for seeing some silver linings in this situation. You know, I've been talking to people, and there are things that actually are nice. I mean, yes, it is horrible that we have a pandemic and that people are dying. I mean, you know, it goes without saying, but don't feel guilty if there are things that are right now feeling good to you or working out well. Like, that is a good thing. Like, that is what keeps us going in these types of situations. So that would be my advice. And reach out for help if you need it, because isolation, particularly, it's funny, you guys were saying some of you are very unisolated and some of you are completely isolated. One of the things we know is that isolation doesn't have to lead to loneliness, but it can. And it can make you even more prone to loneliness because it's a negative mood, which then makes us more open to that. And we also should be more aware of accidental ostracism, in the sense that people who maybe you don't normally connect with that much, and it's not personal, but they're not top of mind right now for you. And if they are somebody who tends to be a little more introverted or not as connected into the social network, they can unintentionally find themselves feeling ostracized when it is really not intentional. So the other thing I would say is, if you don't feel like you're getting enough connection, reach out. And on the flip side, if there's somebody in your mind in your doctoral program that you know doesn't connect that much with people, or is away from home and is by themselves, you know, think about them. Do a Zoom call, send them an email, you know, like, connect with them so that, and by the way, you will feel better because of it. That's the end.
Thanks, girl. I really like your insights. So I believe many students will feel very stressed in this time, because I also feel so. So I really like your concept about the emotion contagion. So it seems it's very important for us to do some funny things to create some positive emotions, and it's important for us to share the positive emotion with others. So yeah, exactly. and I totally agree with you. Like, we should reach out to others if we feel we really need to reach out. All right. So thanks for insights. So any other professors want to add on to Sigal's points? Please raise your physical hand. All right, Jackie, please.
Just to add, I mean, I think. For those of us who, you know, have humor, you know, a little bit of humor can actually break the negativity up. And I think what I'm seeing is, you know, a kind of a change in tolerance. I think that, you know, in terms of looking for some of the silver lining, I think we as individuals are just becoming a little more tolerant of others. And I think that the other thing is kindness. We're seeing people just be a little more kind. And I think these 1 degree differences can have a huge impact when we're going through, a global pandemic where the landscape has changed overnight, and we're wondering, well, what's it going to be like in a couple of months? What is it going to be like next year? So I really think, humor and just tolerance. I can see that people are just becoming, and students, and I think this is wonderful from a teaching perspective, that they are so tolerant of the online teaching and the glitches and everything, that it's just wonderful to see.
Thanks, Jackie. I really like your concepts, like your insights on the humor, the kindness, and tolerance. And I'm sure that will make a big impact on people's life, and especially the PhD student. All right. So thank you again. Any other insights from the panelists? All right. Christina.
To add, this is Christina. I wanted to just echo some of the thoughts that I'm seeing on the expression of positive emotions. For example, gratitude. I think in this time when you do experience the small kindnesses, someone does share some humor with you, saying thank you and genuinely showing that gratitude for and appreciation for that kindness is really important. And then the other observation I would have too is that, and it's related, but that I see a lot of individuals and families going back to a simpler time, if you will, in our history, where we took joy in small things and activities that were simpler format. So again, sitting on your porch outside your home and watching the neighborhood walk by, enjoying a wave across the fence to the next door neighbor. These are things that were traditional maybe 50 years ago, but we get so wound up in our micro environments and our high-tech worlds that we've created that we forget these simple pleasures of spending time with each other, doing low-tech kinds of activities. So I'll just add that.
All right, thank you, Christina. Any other insights? By the way, I really like your gratitude, the insights on gratitude. So it just occurred to me, like on this Saturday, I passed my comprehensive exam, and then I expressed my gratitude to the professors. And then one professor reached out to me by testing me, and then she said, "Oh, I really appreciate your gratitude. It really make my day." So so from the experience, I did think that expressing our gratitude to others will really make people's day. Thank you, Christina. All right. So unless
I think Uta wanted to weigh in on this question.
All right. Hi, please, Uta.
Oh, Uta, I think you're still on mute.
Yeah. Okay. Did I? Okay. Well, I'm I'm gonna improvise, but maybe a personal story, because I actually already had coronavirus and I'm here, which is good. One piece of advice maybe that I can give you is, switch off those news, those kind of doomsday, what are the statistics, what is happening, and just focus on, what is good in your life, connect with those people who are giving you positive emotions. So just to speak to Sigal's point, positive emotional contagion is actually really what we need right now, not sort of kind of focusing on the negative things that really get us into this kind of mindset of threat and kind of, fear. So really focus on the positive. And I like what Chris said, really, express gratitude toward other people. And I think that's, that can be kind of a positive cycle of one person spreading positive emotions to others.
All right, thanks, Uta. Unless Professor have further insights, I'm going to call on one student audience. So I have seen NJ Fluent has been raising her hand. So please go ahead and mute yourself. NJ?
Yeah, Hi, everyone. So I have a question. I think Shamal mentioned that you recently had a student defend, and I know Christina has done work on virtual teams. And for those of us, I should say I'm a fourth year doctoral student at Stanford. And for those of us who are going to be having these big milestones, like defending our dissertation now via Zoom, on a technical level, what are things for us we can do to be more effective, but also on an emotional level. These are big moments that we would normally share with, our peers and celebrate. How can we make those moments still feel meaningful and special? So sort of a two-part question there.
Any panelists who want to answer this question? Oh, Simo, please. Hi, could you unmute yourself?
I can only share what we did today. So, because we thought very hard about how to make this fun, because this was sort of, hard for people to go through. I've had 2 students have defend in the last 2 weeks. So we've done some serious thinking about how to make this fun for them. And, we sort of, when we use Zoom, and that we were sent off into a breakout room to talk about the students' defense, and then left the breakout group and came back. And when we were in there and we wanted to give the good news, I was in touch with in one case, a partner, another case, a roommate, to say like the news is, it's positive. And so when we came back and said, congratulations, their roommate or partner sort of came into the room playing like their favorite song, just to make it really cheerful. They also had a different computer in which their family members and friends from the program were all sort of waiting. So the moment they found out we had a whole there was a separate computer with like 20 faces all yelling congratulations. There's only that much you can do. It's still nothing like the real thing, but at least you feel like you're sharing it as much as possible. And you do have to get other people involved to make this sort of fun and then enjoyable and actually sort of a marker of a real moment of success. And then you can drink a beer that says Corona on it and take a picture.
Andrew, please.
So one other thing I think that you might do, again, depending on what the relationship of you have with students or coworkers, is use the mail, use the physical mail, and plan ahead. And so, for example, if you have a defense coming up and you're pretty confident that things are going to go well, sending something in advance that has one of the do not open until markers on it, and then you can have that moment where something physical is being opened and you're sharing that presence and sharing that experience together. And it's also just so wonderful to get something in the mail. And so vice versa, sending like physical thank you notes to people at this time, sending notes to people expressing how grateful you are that they're in your life, I think is a wonderful way of reaching out and connecting over a long distance.
All right. Any other panelists want?
Go ahead and just echo that comment that Andrew just made, Andrea, in terms of ways that you can celebrate. In our neighborhood, we've done some kind of fun, innovative things for the families with children. And it involves some, a little bit of physical work, but it can really brighten your day to have a message on a sign outside your window. So you're not actually physically handing the person something, but you're putting something on their window. We, in our neighborhood, have teddy bears in the windows of people who have kids, and the kids on their walks will identify the houses with teddy bears and count the teddy bears. And so you could put a teddy bear, someone could put a teddy bear in the window of the person who's going to be defending, or a bouquet of flowers, or some physical evidence this could go along.
All right, thanks, Christina. So any other thoughts on that? All right, I'm going to pass it on to Hannah. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Howie. Okay, so we have time for a couple of more questions. Instead of going to our prepared list, since there have been some hands up for quite a while, let's just go straight to questions from students who are watching live. So let's start with Mindy. If you would like to ask your question, please feel free to take the mute off.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mindy. I'm a fourth year student at USC Marshall. And I'm just curious to know how different universities have been supporting their PhD students and what that support looks like. The reason I'm asking is because we were asked what we needed from our program, but to some extent, I'm just not sure what's possible or not, and then what is like a reasonable request and what isn't a reasonable request.
Thank you for that question, Mindy. Panelists, is there anyone that would like to chime in on this? Uta, I saw your hand raised, so yeah, feel free to share.
Hi, Mindy. Hi. I think, this is kind of your hour to be really proactive and think about not questioning what is appropriate, but really think about what are your goals? What is the best plan scenario for you? Where do you want to go? And think about the challenges that you have and the kind of, hindrances that you have on the way, and what would be the best way for your university to help you with that. And think outside the box and think about alternative A, B, and C and put that to your department. They may be able to, do things that you might not even thought are possible. So I would just encourage you to not stop and censor yourself and thinking, this might not be possible for them, but really come from a perspective of where do you want to go? What would be the best scenario? And speak to your friends, speak to the other students in your program as well. So if they have different, they are in the same situation, if they have similar ideas, perhaps you can really kind of do it together, speak to the PhD director and take it from there.
Great, thanks, Uta. Ron, I'll take your insights next on this.
Yes, questions about what can be done or what are some of the schools doing for the students. I can speak to our group. We have two groups of students, one that would be hitting the market at this AOM and another that's about to take comps. Similar to what Sigal described, we're pushing back comps to the end of the summer, early fall, trying to clear the space and give students time to get their heads focused, right? It's just too soon. I think that seems like a perfectly reasonable request. People just need more time. And we also anticipate the students are not going to be with the faculty in summer as they prepare for comps. And that's another complication in some ways. So we're encouraging the faculty to be active and be attentive and be available to students as they prepare. We're getting better at Zoom, so this shouldn't be an issue, right? You can find time to meet with your students. For the students who are on the market, I know at least one of them is on this call, so she may be surprised by this, but it's going to be tricky. I think there was a discussion about the job market earlier. I do think in some ways it'll be good because the market will push back towards its traditional time frame. But I can tell you that at least because there's so much uncertainty, our university has said that they're not going to hire. And there's a hiring freeze and there's sort of hesitation to commit yet. So I think, we're going to have to work with our students to get them prepared for the reality that, they may wait another year or contemplate a postdoc of some kind. Like, they may hit the market this year. There may not be as many jobs. And so, we're going to have to be honest and figure out creative ways to put people in the best position to finish their degrees and get as good a placement as they possibly can. That's what we're already sort of anticipating that it's going to be challenging over the summer for those who are taking comps. It's going to be challenging come job market time for those who are ready to take the next step. We got to be creative and cooperative all the way through.
I can chime in on that too. This is Christina. I know that several Australian universities offering additional scholarships. So Australian PhD students, particular level of funding, and a number of the universities are extending that funding to allow for 6 months or even an additional year in some instances in the program. I also know that many of the interim deadlines, for example, proposal defense deadlines, dissertation defense deadlines, are being extended in a variety of different programs around the world, including ours at Pepperdine. And I will say too, I know one of the questions that had been on the chat was around tenure clocks, and I have been told that there are several universities that are extending tenure clocks and have made that announcement, that they will have it, those that are in close to the tenure timeframe are being given an additional year.
Same here. So all assistant professors had the option to extend for a year their tenure clock. We haven't gotten to the point where we're looking at funding options beyond year 5, but that's already on the table, and that's the discussion for those students who would be on the market this year to have support for an extra year as they get ready for the next move.
All right, thank you, panelists, for sharing your answers to that question. I know we're almost out of time, but we're going to take one more question because there is someone who's had their hand patiently raised for quite a long time. So, Mijang, would you like to ask your question to the panelists? And we'll probably have to keep the answers to this question pretty brief, but we would like to squeeze it in.
Sure. Thank you so much. My name is Mijang Kwan, and I am a 4th-year PhD student at the University of Michigan in OB. So first, thank you so much for doing this. It really helps a lot to learn tips and also to know that so many people care. I second to Sigal's previous point to focus on more positive things, and then I have a related question. So maybe this is too early, but this is a totally new situation, and there have been many, many changes. And I can imagine some of the changes will be gone, but some of them will not, and then become the new normal. From the food delivery and changing some work permanently to remote work, to the fact that people now care more about others, check in others more, and the growing love and, I don't know, the need for the humanity. So is there any interesting changes or opportunities you see arising? Could be related to our research or not? That's my question.
Thanks for your question. Panelists, does anyone have any quick reactions to that question?
Mauricia.
Oh, Matricia?
Matricia.
I think I must be hidden from Hannah.
But sorry about that, yeah.
To address your question quickly, I think everything that's happening is very interesting. And I do think there will be some lasting changes and maybe a new normal. We can't expect that everything will go back exactly the way it was. So in order for progression to take place, we should take the best of this horrible situation and make it a part of the new normal. And that, I think, is also, there are a lot of rich areas for research. The impact of this social distancing. How do people, especially for OB, when you think about behavioral dynamics, are there lasting behavioral differences in people? If habits take 13 days to set in, we have all these 14-day self-quarantine things. What changes in a person, and then how does that change the group that they interact with? And how does that change the workplace or organizations that they're affiliated with? So I think it's very exciting for future research. And yes, we'll have a new normal, I think, when this is all over.
Thank you, Matricia. Are there any other panelists that want to make a very quick additional response? Celia, sure, go ahead.
This is not me, actually. It's a pitch for a beautiful, beautiful post that Damien. It's 11:30 at night, and I'm not. Phillips. I wanted to say Damian Lewis, and he's an actor. Damon Phillips wrote today about a letter to young scholars, It's easy to look up, and it was a beautifully written piece about how this will. I didn't mean to say before when I said this too shall pass that I'm not trying to minimize what's happening. I meant that everything always changes, and that the years after World War II were a very, very generative period of research, and so will this be. But if you had a good research question before COVID, it's still a good research question now. So just to not let the disruption completely overwhelm our original plans, and to sort of move forward in this new way with grace.
Thank you very much for that reminder, Celia. Okay, so Sigal, if you want to close.
I will close it out. So I've got to say, I think, I could happily continue listening and talking for another hour. We won't do that for the respect for everybody's time and for all the people who are up really late. So I'm really happy about, by the way, that last question, Mijong, because it's, it is trying to look forward. One of the things we know is that, particularly from a study I did, is that hope does weigh stronger than fear. And have hope, and look at the community around you. I love seeing all these names and people. You guys are the future of our field, and we're going to be fine. And this is going to be a time period, and it's going to be memories, and it's going to be hard at points, but we're going to be fine. And I really, really, I so want to thank, actually, first, I really, really want to thank the organizers of this, which are our doctoral student reps who just did such a beautiful job. Hannah, Lisa, Catherine, Howie, you guys they've worked so hard to get this set up, and together with also Uta and Christina and Laura, who's been very low key, but is actually the technology wonder behind all of this to make sure that we stayed up and operating. One of the most fun part for me about this was the hand raising, and was actually seeing you guys and being able to hear that. I'm so grateful that worked. It was risky, but it was worth the risk. Our panelists, you're amazing. I don't know if I'm sure the students don't quite know this, but each one of you in your own right. Students, you've got to understand, these are like the best people in our field in every single way, like different pieces of it. And I'm so glad that this is actually going to be recorded and put online so that a lot of other people can get the knowledge from this. And what I'll leave you with, though, is take care of yourselves. That's what sort of where I started. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your loved ones. Make that your first priority. Stay safe. Stay healthy. And we will either see you again in a virtual format. We might see you that way first, or we might see you physically, but whichever way it will be meaningful and wonderful. So thank you very much. And thanks to all the people who are on the edges of time on this, the ones who got up really early and the ones who stayed up really late. We worked hard to try to get everything to fit in. Thank you. And have a great week. Bye-bye.